By the time Miriam Hartwell stepped down from the stagecoach, the first snow had covered the road behind her. Coldwater Crossing was smaller than Samuel Vale's letters had made it sound. A trading post, a blacksmith shed, 3 houses, and the Ashen Elk Range beneath an iron sky. Miriam stood beside her wooden trunk while wet snow gathered on her brown coat. The coat strained across her hips and full body, but it was warm and hers. One hand held the trunk, the other closed around the cloth bag of seeds in her pocket. "Samuel Vale?" she asked. The driver looked toward the trading post instead of at her. A narrow-shouldered man in a clean wool vest stepped outside. His eyes traveled over Miriam and paused where cruel men's eyes often paused. "You're Hartwell?" "Miriam Hartwell." The men by the hitching rail exchanged smiles. The man rubbed his jaw. "Jonas Rusk. I run the post." He hesitated only long enough to make the next words worse. "Samuel's dead." For a moment Miriam heard neither horses nor wind. "When?" "3 weeks ago, horse went over shale on the North Trail." 3 weeks. She had been crossing Nebraska, believing a man waited at the end of the road. "You knew I was coming. Coach fare was paid. No sense wasting it." One of the men laughed. Miriam faced him until the sound stopped. Rusk produced a folded paper. "Samuel left debts: flour, powder, salt, iron, interest. Cabin and trap lines come to me against the balance." His letters said the cabin was clear. "Letters aren't accounts." "Then show me the accounts." A man near the door grinned. "Not here 5 minutes and already counting the dead man's property." "I crossed half a country to keep a promise," Miriam said. "You crossed a muddy street to mock a stranger. We may both judge what that says about us." Rusk spread the paper over her trunk. The sum at the bottom was large enough to swallow a cabin whole. Miriam read each line. She had kept store ledgers before her stepfather decided her wages belonged to the family. 2 entries bore the same date in different ink. Winter salt appeared twice. "Where is the original ledger?" "At my desk." "I want to see it." "You have no legal standing. You never married him." Rusk folded the paper. "A coach leaves south at first light, weather allowing. I can arrange credit." "Credit for passage I partly paid?" "You ate the rest getting here, by the look of you." Silence settled. Everyone knew where not to look when cruelty became public. Heat climbed Miriam's face. She kept her chin level. "If Samuel owed you, his death did not make me your entertainment." The trading post door opened. Cold came first. Then a man so tall he bent beneath the lintel. Snow covered his buffalo coat. Buckskin showed beneath it. He carried a rifle and a rolled wolf hide. Black hair touched his shoulders. Silver threaded his beard. A white scar ran along his square jaw. His eyes were gray and still. "Ronan," Rusk said, "your brother's shipment finally arrived." The mountain man stopped moving. His gaze went from the paper to Miriam. "You were to marry Samuel?" "Yes. He never told me. He told me little about his brother." Rusk tapped the paper against his palm. "No matter. She goes back tomorrow. Samuel's property comes to me." "She has a name," Ronan said. "I know it." "Use it." Rusk's mouth hardened. "Miss Hartwell, then. She is cargo delivered after the buyer died." Ronan lowered the wolf hide to the floor. "She's not cargo." His voice was low and final. Rusk gave a thin laugh. "What will you do? Take her up the mountain and feed another mouth until spring?" Ronan looked at the whitening road. "The pass closes by tomorrow night." "Then she had better leave. The south road floods below Elk Creek in hard snow." "Not my concern." "No," Ronan said. "That seems plain." He turned to Miriam. Up close, she saw his shoulders bent from years beneath traps and hides. He kept several feet between them. "My brother's cabin is 2 days north. You can stay until the thaw." "With you?" Rusk asked. Ronan ignored him. "Separate room, food, heat." "In exchange for what?" Miriam asked. "Work that needs doing. Stores, cooking, if you know it, mending. I trap. I'm gone some days. And in spring, the pass opens. You leave if you choose." "If I don't?" A pause. "Then we speak again." Miriam tightened her hand around the seeds. "No marriage claim?" "No. No husband's rights without a marriage?" His eyes hardened at the need for the question. "No." "No touching me because you fed me?" "No." Rusk snorted. "You're bargaining from an empty hand, woman. Then it should trouble you that I still know how." Ronan bent, lifted her trunk as though it were a bedroll, and carried it outside. Snow filled the wheel tracks south. Miriam followed him to the horses. Behind them, Rusk called that the debt would not vanish because Ronan carried away Samuel's last foolish purchase. Ronan secured the trunk to a pack saddle. "Keep the paper," he said without turning. "You'll need something to explain yourself with." Miriam mounted the smaller horse without asking for help. Ronan noticed and said nothing. Coldwater Crossing receded in snow. Before they reached the first rise, the south road had vanished. Ahead waited the cabin of a dead man, the brother who had not wanted a wife, and a winter that had just closed its hand around them. The road vanished behind them before Coldwater Crossing disappeared from sight. Snow moved sideways through the pines, needling Miriam's cheeks beneath her hat. Ronan rode ahead on the dark bay, the pack horse tied behind him, and Miriam following on the smaller mare. He spoke only when the trail narrowed or ice hid beneath pine needles. "Keep her uphill. Loosen the rein. Don't let her choose the edge," Miriam answered when needed. Otherwise, she saved her breath. By noon, she understood that Ronan Vale did not waste words making silence comfortable. He rode as if the mountain were speaking and he was listening for things she could not yet hear. It made her feel like another bundle tied behind his saddle. Samuel's responsibility, Samuel's mistake, Samuel's bride delivered after the grave had closed. They stopped beside a creek where black water moved between shelves of ice. Ronan checked the horse's hooves, then handed Miriam dried venison. "You always talk this much?" she asked. "No, that was nearly generous." The trail climbed. Pines crowded close, their branches heavy with snow. Miriam's thighs burned from gripping the saddle, yet she refused to complain. Ronan glanced back twice. The third time, she said, "If you expect me to fall, you may be waiting a while." "I expect the horse to. That is less insulting. It wasn't meant to be either." The slope steepened around a shoulder of rock. The pack horse stepped onto ice hidden beneath powder. One hind leg slid. The animal lurched sideways, the rope snapping tight between it and Ronan's saddle. 2 flour sacks struck the downhill pannier. The horse screamed. "Back!" Ronan shouted. Miriam was already off her mare. The pack horse scrabbled for purchase while its hindquarters slid toward the drop. Ronan seized the lead rope and braced, but the animal dragged him downhill. "Stay clear." "No." "Miriam, tell me what holds." His gray eyes cut toward her, hard with fear. The pine. Wrap the spare line low. She ran the rope around the nearest trunk. Ronan passed her the end. 2 turns, under the load rope. She obeyed. The horse slid again. "Lean back." Miriam planted both boots, wrapped the rope across her hip, and gave it her full weight. The line bit through her coat. Her thighs shook. Ronan wedged a fallen limb behind the animal's hoof, then cut 1 flour sack loose. It tumbled before lodging against a stump. "Hold." "I am holding." He shoved beneath the pannier. Miriam leaned until her shoulders almost touched the tree. Then the horse found the limb. Its hind leg rose. Ronan hauled. Miriam locked her knees and pulled. The animal lunged uphill and collapsed on level ground. Ronan reached her in 3 strides. "Are you hurt?" "No. You could have gone over. So could you. That isn't the same." "It is if both of us are dead." His jaw tightened, but he offered his hand. Miriam took it. He pulled her upright without surprise at her weight, without the grunt men sometimes used to announce that lifting her had cost them something. "You knew how to brace. I moved grain barrels in Missouri. They never asked whether I was shaped delicately." He looked at the flour sack below. "I'll get it. We'll get it." A pause. "All right." They recovered the sack with rope, a pine branch, and the horse's steady pull. By dusk, Ronan had built camp beneath a rock overhang. He placed their bedrolls on opposite sides of the fire and hung buffalo hide against the wind. Miriam noticed hers lay nearer the heat. Morning hardened the world. Snow squeaked beneath the horse's hooves. Ronan rode more slowly, explaining what he saw. A bent sapling meant ice ahead. A smooth drift could hide a hollow. Blue shadows warned of stone. At midday, he handed her rope. "Tie yesterday's knot." She did. Wrong. It held. The tree was kinder than the knot. She retied it. He tested the line. Better. Tender praise from a mountain man. Don't grow used to it. By late afternoon, the pines opened around a narrow shelf. The cabin stood against the slope, built of dark logs chinked with clay. Its chimney rose above a snow-burdened roof. Iron traps hung beneath the eaves. 2 hides moved in the wind. Inside stood a stone hearth, a scarred table, shelves of crockery, an old rifle above the mantel, and 3 tin cups hanging from pegs. Miriam looked at them longer than she intended. "Samuel's is the dented one," Ronan said. He laid a fire. Miriam removed her gloves but did not touch the 3rd cup. Her room was small, clean, and separate from Ronan's. A narrow bed, a washstand, 2 hooks, and a wooden latch inside the door. Ronan tested the latch, then handed her the key. "1 winter," he said. "No more. And if the pass opens early, you can leave early. If I choose." "Yes." She put her seed bag in the empty washstand drawer. The parcel looked foolish there, carrying spring into a room surrounded by snow. When she returned, beans simmered over the fire. Ronan pointed to a hatch in the floor. "Stores are below. You said you knew household keeping." "I said I knew work." "Then look." The cellar smelled of earth, smoke, and something sweetly wrong. Miriam lifted the lantern. Potatoes along the west wall had softened where damp crept through stone. A crock of rendered fat wore a gray film. Beans spilled from a gnawed sack. She counted the salt bricks twice, then climbed up with the invoice. "This says 12. "There are 9. "You used 3? "No. The potatoes must be moved tonight. The fat may still be saved. The beans need sorting before the mice finish them." Ronan looked toward the dark windows. Wind pressed snow against the glass. "How long?" "Most of the night." He removed his buffalo coat. Miriam studied him. "You expected me to wait until morning. I expected you to say what needed doing. And now we do it." Below them, in the cold dark beneath Samuel's cabin, the winter stores were already failing. The missing salt meant someone had begun taking from the Vale brothers long before Miriam ever reached Coldwater Crossing. They worked until the lantern smoked. Miriam carried the sound potatoes upstairs, separating the soft ones from those that might last. Ronan shifted crates from the damp western wall, while she cut mold from the rendered fat and tested what remained by smell. "Save it?" he asked. "Most. You're certain? No. I enjoy standing in cold holes at midnight making guesses. He looked at her. That was humor. I know. By dawn, beans lay over canvas near the hearth. Potatoes rested in dry sand, and the salvaged fat simmered while Miriam skimmed it clean. Ronan repaired the gnawed sack and carried every crate she pointed to without argument. He did argue the next morning. The salt belongs on the north shelf. The north shelf sweats when the fire is high. It has been there 6 winters, and 3 bricks are missing. That does not mean the shelf took them. It means the shelf is not sacred. Ronan stared at her new arrangement. Salt in a lidded chest, flour raised on blocks, beans hung from hooks, smoked meat shifted to the cold wall. I knew where everything was. You still do. It is simply somewhere sensible now. He muttered something in Gaelic. Was that a blessing? No. The storm arrived before noon. Wind shook soot from the chimney. Snow buried the woodpile and erased the trail to the stable. For 12 days, the world ended at the cabin walls. Ronan checked the horses, split wood beneath the lean-to, repaired traps beside the fire, and watched the weather as if personally offended by it. Miriam counted flour, dried apples, salt, and meat, marking each day in charcoal beside the cellar hatch. She also noticed his bowl. The first time, she thought he had eaten earlier. By the 4th evening, the pattern was plain. Her portion held venison, his held broth and beans. At supper, he pushed the fuller bowl toward her. Miriam pushed it back. Eat. I am. You are drinking flavored water. I have had worse. That is not an argument for continuing. You need more in cold weather. So do you. I can go lean. For how long? As long as needed. Miriam set down her spoon. Samuel's rifle above the mantel caught the firelight. Is this how you understand our agreement? You provide everything. I work until I repay every bite. And when food runs short, you quietly vanish 1 spoonful at a time. It is not vanishing. It is if you hide it. His jaw tightened. I have lived in houses where people counted what I ate, she said. I will not live in one where a man starves himself so I can pretend my place costs nothing. You think this is about your size? I think men often hide foolishness beneath noble language. The wind leaned against the cabin. I brought you here, he said. You were promised food. I was promised a winter, not a sacrifice. The stores are uncertain. Then we divide uncertainty. He looked at her. A bargain cannot survive if one person turns himself into the offering. If we run short together. After a long silence, Ronan took the fuller bowl, divided the meat exactly, and returned half. Equal? Equal. They ate. The days found a rhythm. Miriam boiled the fat into white cakes, baked hard biscuits, and rewrote Ronan's inventory marks after discovering he used nearly identical scratches for elk and venison. They look different, he said. To you, they are different animals. I had gathered that. He handed her the charcoal. Wet mittens found pegs near the hearth. Flour was lifted from mice. A folded cloth protected the table beneath the coffee pot. Ronan complained about none of it, which Miriam understood as resistance temporarily outnumbered by sense. Then the chair broke. It was the narrow ladder back beside the fire, built for a slimmer body and made worse by arms pressing into Miriam's hips. On the 9th night of the storm, one joint cracked as she rose. Miriam froze. Ronan looked up from a trap chain. The joint was weak, she said. It was. I did not throw myself into it. I saw. I can stand. You can sit somewhere that fits. He carried the chair to his workbench. Instead of mending the joint, he removed both arms, widened the seat with fitted boards, braced it underneath, and stretched softened deer hide across the wood. When he returned it to the hearth, it looked plain and strong. You did not need to remake it. It was made wrong. For me. For sitting. She ran her palm over the hide. Thank you. Do not lean back. The brace needs another peg. That almost sounded like concern. It was carpentry. The moccasins appeared 2 mornings later outside her door. Elk hide, rabbit fur lining, broad enough that her toes did not curl. She found Ronan feeding the horses. You made these. Had spare hide. And spare hours? Storm provided them. They fit. He tightened a girth strap that needed no tightening. Good. That evening the temperature dropped. Ronan entered, holding his right shoulder too carefully. He tried to remove his buffalo coat and stopped halfway. Sit, Miriam said. I am fine. You are trapped inside your own coat. He sat. She eased the heavy hide away and saw white scars crossing his shoulder and vanishing beneath his buckskin shirt. 4 ridges. Claw marks. Ronan's face closed. Miriam did not ask. She warmed bear grease by the fire and worked it into the rigid muscle around the scars. Beneath her fingers, the old injury pulled like rope frozen in rain. Tell me if I hurt you. You will not. That sounds like a challenge. It was not. His breathing changed near the deepest scar. She eased away. Better? Yes. When she finished, Ronan rolled his shoulder once. His gaze went to the repaired chair, then to the moccasins on her feet. Storm breaks tomorrow. You can hear that? Feel the pressure. Then I should finish Samuel's desk before you check the traps. The desk stood in the room Samuel had used. Miriam sorted receipts, powder tallies and scraps marked with symbols shaped like trees, hooks and split antlers. Root signs, she realized. One mark repeated beside the words white pine. Beneath a false bottom in the drawer, she found half a ledger page. Samuel's hand listed beaver, fox, and marten, delivered to Rusk over 3 months. The numbers were careful. At the bottom stood a total weight. Miriam carried the fragment to the main room and laid it beside the trading post invoice. Ronan read both. These do not match, she said. No. The invoice credits Samuel for 11 fewer pelts. Could be 2 deliveries. Did he divide them? He marked every delivery. Then Rusk's paper is wrong. Or Samuel's is. Miriam looked at the precise root symbols and straight columns. You do not believe that. Ronan folded the fragment once. No. Outside, the wind stopped for the first time in 12 days. The silence made the cabin seem to listen. On the table lay the first proof that the missing salt was not an accident, and that Jonas Rusk had begun taking from the Vale brothers long before Samuel died. The wind had stopped, but the cold deepened. By midnight, frost feathered the windows. Ronan sat near the hearth with Samuel's ledger fragment beside him, his right arm hanging too still. Miriam watched him try to lift the coffee pot with his left hand. Your shoulder. It will pass. It did not pass last night. He was silent. She warmed bear grease between her palms. Ronan removed his buckskin shirt with careful, irritated movements. The scars crossed his shoulder in 4 pale ridges, then vanished beneath his arm. Grizzly? Miriam asked. Yes. When? 7 years ago. She worked the grease into the hardened muscle. Samuel was there. Ronan's back tightened. He was checking a beaver run. Bear came out of the brush. I got between them. And nearly died. He lived. No pride. Only accounting. Miriam pressed gently beside the deepest scar. You still think every danger requires your body between it and someone else. That is sometimes where a body belongs. Sometimes. He looked over his shoulder. Not always, she said. For a while there was only the fire and pine scraping the roof. Samuel died on the North Trail, Ronan said. I was at White Pine. If I had gone with him, you might have died too. I might have seen the shale break. You do not know that. No, but he carried the word as if uncertainty were guilt. Miriam covered his shoulder with a warm cloth. My family weighed flour every Saturday, she said. My stepfather said a woman built like me had to earn every spoonful twice, once by working and once by being ashamed of needing it. Ronan turned fully toward her. My mother stopped him when she was alive. After she died, no one did. Miriam, do not pity me. I was not going to. She believed him. Samuel never asked my dress size, she said. He asked whether I knew root cellars, whether I could salt meat, keep accounts, mend harness, and tell spoiled grain from damp grain. I thought perhaps that meant he saw me. He did. How can you know? Ronan crossed to Samuel's room. When he returned, he carried a sealed envelope, softened at the corners by handling. Found it in his coat after we buried him. Her name was written across the front. He never sent it? No. Miriam broke the seal. Samuel's hand was more uneven than the ledger hand. He wrote that winter had come early, that Ronan believed weather could be argued with if a man owned enough rope, and that the cabin needed another mind in it. He did not want the woman Coldwater Crossing would admire. He wanted the woman who understood that a house survived because someone noticed what was failing before it failed. At the bottom, one line had been scratched out and written again. I hope you will not mistake being needed for being merely useful. Miriam read it twice. Ronan stared at the fire. He chose me for work, she said. He chose you because you understood what work meant. That is not the same as love. No, the honesty hurt less than comfort would have. And you? She asked. Why did you bring me here? Because leaving you with Rusk was wrong. Only that? Ronan's gaze moved to her face and stayed there too long. At first, before either could say more, a horse stamped outside. Ronan reached the door before the second sound. He took the old rifle from above the mantel and stepped into the dark. Miriam followed to the threshold. No rider waited in the yard. Only a paper nailed to the cabin post, its edge snapping in the cold. Ronan tore it free. Notice of seizure. Jonas Rusk claimed the Vale property, trap lines, stores, animals, and access through White Pine against Samuel's unpaid balance. Surrender was demanded before the spring rendezvous. Miriam carried the paper inside and laid it beside the trading invoice. The numbers looked clean at first. Then she angled both pages toward the fire. The ink on 3 figures caught the light differently. On the seizure notice, the curve of a 6 sat over the straighter spine of a 1. A 9 had been thickened from a 4. The same hand had altered the winter salt charge. These were written over, she said. Ronan leaned close. You are certain? Yes. Can you prove it? Not with this alone. He picked up his coat. Where are you going? Coldwater Crossing. Tonight? Before Rusk moves again. The trail is ice. I know the trail. And I know a man trying to put his body between danger and everyone else. His hand stopped on the rifle sling. We go together, Miriam said. No. Then you will return to find the papers hidden, the stores counted, and me following your tracks badly enough to make both our lives harder. A muscle moved in his jaw. Outside, snow began covering the rider's hoofprints. Ronan looked at Samuel's letter. the altered figures, and Miriam standing in the firelight wearing the moccasins he had made. "Dawn," he said. The deadline before the spring rendezvous had turned suspicion into a threat, and by morning they would have to carry it back into the town that had already decided what Miriam was worth. Dawn came gray and hard. Ronan saddled the horses without speaking. Miriam wrapped Samuel's letter, the altered invoice, and the seizure notice in oilcloth beneath her coat. The trail down was worse than the climb. Ice glazed the shaded turns. Twice Ronan dismounted to lead the horses across exposed rock. At midday he looked back. "You can wait at the blacksmith's." "No. Rusk will use the crowd. He used it before. That is why I am warning you." And I heard the warning. Coldwater Crossing appeared beneath smoke and low cloud. Men gathered near the hitching rail as Ronan and Miriam rode in. Rusk stood behind his counter with a pencil over one ear. "You received the notice." "We did," Miriam said. Rusk looked at Ronan. "I was speaking to the property holder. The paper names Samuel's estate," she said. "I came under contract to marry him. I have standing enough to ask how his debt was calculated. You never married him. That does not make your arithmetic honest." Ronan placed the altered invoice and seizure notice on the counter. He did not threaten Rusk. He simply stood there in his buffalo coat, scar pale against his jaw, broad enough to make the room smaller. "We want the ledger," he said. "No." Miriam drew the pages closer. These figures were written over. "Samuel's fragment records 11 more pelts than your invoice credits." Rusk's eyes flickered. Then he laughed. "You came across the country to marry a dead trapper, and now think yourself a bookkeeper. I was a bookkeeper before I became anybody's bride." His gaze moved over her. "From the look of you, I would have guessed your talent lay nearer the pantry." Ronan's hand settled on the counter. The wood creaked. Miriam touched his sleeve once. Not because Rusk deserved protection. Because Ronan deserved not to be led by a man who wanted him angry. "Mocking my body will not correct your numbers," she said. "It may explain why Samuel's stores ran so fast." "They did not. That is the problem." The smile left his face. Rusk opened a drawer and removed a banknote. "I will pay your southbound fare. Sign a statement saying Ronan Vale took you to the cabin against your will." "And then?" she asked. "You go home. He answers for unlawful confinement. The property settles cleanly." "Cleanly for whom?" "For everyone sensible." Ronan's voice came low beside her. "Do not answer him." Miriam turned. "Why?" "He is using you. He has done that since I stepped off the coach. I would like the privilege of refusing him myself." Ronan's jaw tightened, but he stepped back. Miriam faced the room. "I went to the Vale cabin because I chose shelter over being stranded in a town that laughed while a man called me cargo. I remained there by agreement. I have a room with a lock and the right to leave when the pass opens. Ronan Vale has never touched me without permission or claimed any right over me." Rusk held out the money. "Think carefully." "I have." She pushed it back. "I am not for sale in either direction." The pencil over Rusk's ear snapped between his fingers. "Then you get nothing from this post. No salt, no powder, no medicine, no shot, not until the debt is paid." "You know what that means in winter," Rusk said. "I know. Spring rendezvous settles the claim. If the balance is unpaid, I take the cabin, animals, stores, trap lines, and white pine root." "You will have to prove the balance," Miriam said. "I have the ledger." "Then show it." "No." They left without buying a grain of salt. Outside, Ronan secured the papers beneath his saddle flap. "You should have taken the fare," he said. "Do you believe that?" "No." Then do not say cruel things merely because you are frightened. I am not frightened. Your hand nearly broke his counter. That was irritation. Of course. 2 miles beyond town, Ronan raised one fist. The pack horse's lead line had been cut halfway through. A fresh boot mark pressed the snow near its hind leg. Meant to break on the climb, Miriam said. Ronan followed the tracks before returning. 2 riders. Rusks? No proof. They found the first damaged trap before dusk. Its spring had been hammered flat. The second was missing. At the third set, blood marked the snow where an animal had escaped dragging chain. He is cutting the line, Ronan said, to force you into debt for supplies, to force me off White Pine. The cabin felt smaller when they returned. Miriam lit the hearth while Ronan checked the stable, shutters, and roofline. She made coffee and, without thinking, took the plain tin cup from the third peg. Samuel's dented cup remained untouched. Ronan entered carrying bundled pelts. Do not put those away, she said. I need the marks. Each hide carried Rusk's lead seal, date, weight, receiving mark. Miriam spread them beside Samuel's fragment, invoices, and seizure notice. For 3 hours, she rebuilt the transactions. Samuel's root symbols gave dates. The seals gave weight. The invoices showed what Rusk claimed to have received. Miriam wrote columns in charcoal, erased them, and began again. Ronan watched from the hearth. You do not have to finish tonight. Yes. Why? Because if I stop, I will hear him offering to send me home. This is not your debt. No, it is our danger. The word hung between them. Near midnight, Miriam reached the final column. Samuel did not owe Rusk. Ronan came to the table. How certain? Certain enough to stake my name on it. Rusk undercounted pelts, doubled charges, and carried interest on balances Samuel had paid. If these seals are true, Rusk owes Samuel. Seals can be challenged. We need the full ledger. Ronan rubbed his beard. Samuel hid things when he expected trouble. Where? Tool chest, rifle stock, false hems. They searched Samuel's room. Nothing lay beneath the mattress or behind the wall pegs. The rifle stock was solid. Miriam emptied the tool chest, then noticed the inside depth did not match the outside. She pressed the bottom. One corner shifted. Ronan slid a knife beneath the seam and lifted a thin board. Under it lay a ledger sheet wrapped in waxed cloth. 3 seasons of pelts, supply deductions, payments. At the bottom, 2 witnesses had signed, Abel Mercer and Hugh Larkin, both expected at the spring rendezvous. This can break Rusk, Ronan said. If we carry it there, his eyes moved to the shuttered window. He knows we are looking. He also knows I refuse to leave. That makes you the easier target. No, it makes me the target he misjudged. Ronan folded the page into the waxed cloth. At first light, I take you to the mission south of Cedar Fork. Miriam stood very still. No, it is outside Rusk's reach. And outside the cabin, the records, and every choice I made. You have made your point. I am not a point. Miriam, I did not stay because Samuel died. I am not staying because you rescued me or because I lack courage to leave. The fire snapped between them. I am here because this is the first house where I have been allowed to contribute without being ordered to make myself smaller. I am here because those stores, horses, trap lines, and White Pine are things we are still alive to keep. Ronan's face changed slightly. You said we. Yes. You understand what Rusk may do. I understand what he has already done. He looked at her for a long time, then placed the ledger sheet in her hands. We take it to the rendezvous together. Outside, wind moved through white pine like a blade being drawn. The traps were broken, their supplies were cut off, and Jonas Rusk now knew that Miriam Hartwell had chosen a side. The ledger lay wrapped beneath Samuel's buffalo coat, hidden from smoke and damp. Ronan checked the shutters twice before dawn while Miriam counted powder, shot, salt, and medicine. The numbers had not improved. "We have enough powder for 22 charges," she said. 21. One stays loaded." "The old rifle?" He nodded toward Samuel's gun above the mantel. "And salt? 3 weeks if we are careful." "We have already been careful." Ronan said nothing. By noon he had drawn the white pine root in charcoal on deer hide, 2 creeks, lodgepole forest, then a bridge above a gorge. Miriam leaned over the hide. "These marks? Trap sets. The split antler? Elk crossing. The hook? Beaver run. And this? Deadfall slope. Do not cross below it after fresh snow." She studied until the symbols became places. Ronan showed her a timber hitch, a bow line, and a doubled hauling loop. "The loop must hold if the line freezes," he said. Miriam tied it. He pulled. The knot slipped. Again. She retied it. Again. On the 7th attempt, it held. "You enjoy this," she said. "No." You nearly smiled. Cold distorts faces. He taught her to read cut branches, boot marks, and shaved pine signs. Then he took Samuel's old rifle down. Miriam looked at it. "I said I can use a gun. You said you fired one twice. That is using it. It is surviving the noise." Outside, he set a cooking pot against the snowbank and showed her how to brace, breathe, and squeeze the trigger. Her first shot missed the pot by several feet. Ronan reloaded. "My family would be comforted," she said. "They always feared I might become dangerous. You are dangerous." That sounded almost flattering. "You keep finding numbers other men hoped would stay hidden." Her second shot struck snow beneath the pot. The third grazed iron. "That is enough," he said. "Enough to frighten a door. Enough to make a man reconsider one." He gave her the better powder horn. Miriam knew what that meant. Rusk had moved beyond paper. That evening Ronan sorted traps near the hearth. Iron jaws, chains, swivels, stakes. White pine mattered most. Without pelts, they had nothing to trade at rendezvous, and the cabin would weaken before spring. "I am going with you," Miriam said. "No. You just spent half a day teaching me the route. So you can read it if needed." "It is needed. You stay with the ledger. The ledger does not require feeding. The horses do. So we take one." Ronan set down a trap. Rusk cut a lead rope and broke 3 sets. "He wants me on that trail. Then he also wants me alone here. The cabin is easier to defend than the gorge. That is not the same as safe. No." The word held more fear than argument. Miriam folded her arms. "You told me we would carry the ledger to rendezvous together. We will. After you decide every danger before then belongs only to you." His face hardened. "I know White Pine, and I know you. You are putting yourself between danger and everyone else again. Samuel died when I was not there, and you think that means you must never leave another person beside you when danger comes. It means I do not gamble with lives I can move out of reach. My life is not yours to move." Silence filled the cabin. The fire cracked. Snow slid heavily from one edge of the roof. Ronan looked toward the window. "Storm load is building. Do not stand beneath the north eave." "You are changing the subject. I am telling you something that may keep you alive. And I am telling you the thing that may keep you human." His jaw flexed. Miriam regretted the cruelty, but not the truth beneath it. Ronan rose and went to the stable. He returned after dark with the bay ready, feed packed, and good traps behind the cantle. On the table he placed the brass key to the cellar. Miriam stared at it. "You keep that." "Not while I am gone. You said together. I said we carry the ledger together. I did not say you ride into a prepared ambush. That is a distinction designed by a man who wants the final word. Yes." She almost laughed. Ronan set down the spare buffalo coat, the best ammunition, the medicine packet, and Samuel's rifle. "You are giving me everything useful. I am leaving you everything useful. There is a difference?" "To me." He slept by the door, boots on. Before dawn, Miriam woke to tack buckles and the soft breath of horses. She went outside without a coat. Snow silvered his hair and beard. "When will you return?" "Tomorrow by dark. If you are late, wait until morning." "No." His eyes met hers. "Then wait until noon." "No." "Miriam, tell me the route." He named it: East Creek, Split Cedar, Black Rock, Lower Beaver Run, White Pine Bridge, North Fork. She repeated it exactly. Ronan fastened the spare coat around her shoulders. "I will come back." That is what men say when they want women to stop asking. "It is what I intend." He mounted and rode beneath the pines. Miriam watched until the trees took him. The first day passed in silence. She fed the horses, checked the roof, hid the ledger deeper in Samuel's coat, and set the rifle near the door. By dusk, snow began again. Ronan did not return. She left a lamp in the window and kept coffee hot. Morning brought 3 inches of powder and no hoofbeats. At noon, Miriam spread the hide map. The eastern sets took 1 day unless something delayed him beyond White Pine. She counted the symbols, studied the wind, and remembered the river traps packed for the North Fork. He had planned to cross the bridge. On the White Pine Trail, Ronan found the first broken set before sunrise. The chain had been severed with a cold chisel. Farther on, horse tracks crossed his own line and vanished where the wind had scoured the ridge. At the bridge, the bay stopped. Ronan dismounted. Fresh saw marks hid beneath snow on the western beam. He crouched to examine them. A raven lifted from the gorge. The bridge gave way. Wood cracked beneath him. Ronan threw himself toward the far side, caught the edge, and struck the rock wall with his left leg. Pain split upward from ankle to hip. The bay screamed and backed away safely. Ronan hung above black water. He hauled himself onto the far ledge and lay still until the mountain stopped turning. His lower leg would bear no weight. Across the gorge, the horse paced with food, blankets, and rifle. Ronan looked at the broken bridge and understood that Rusk had not meant merely to slow him. At the cabin, Miriam tied the doubled hauling loop exactly as he had taught her. She packed hot broth, bread, venison, bear grease, splints, medicine, rope, 2 traps, and the spare buffalo blanket. The ledger remained hidden in Samuel's coat. She locked the cellar, put the key inside her dress, saddled the mare, and led her into the storm. Ronan had left her the house because he believed protection meant facing the mountain alone. By the time Miriam reached the Split Cedar, snow had already begun erasing the trail that might still lead her to him. Snow erased the lower trail before Miriam reached Black Rock. She dismounted where the mare began slipping and led her beneath the pines, brushing snow from trap signs cut into bark. Split antler, hook, 2 crossed lines for the North Fork. The marks meant to keep her behind now led her to him. At White Pine, the trail ended at splintered timber. The bridge hung broken above black water. On the far ledge, the bay paced beside Ronan's gear. Ronan lay beneath an overhang, one leg stretched stiffly before him. "Miriam?" His voice crossed the gorge thinly. She almost laughed from relief. "Can you stand?" "No." "Can you crawl?" "Some." "Then save your strength. You need to go back." "I have only just arrived. The storm is closing. So is your mouth if you keep wasting breath." Even injured, his glare carried. Miriam tied the mare behind a pine and examined the gorge. The remaining bridge rope sagged between broken beams. The current was too violent to cross, and she could not lift him alone. She unpacked the traps, rope, hatchet, and saddle. "What are you doing?" he called. "Disobeying you carefully." She looped rope around a pine, ran it through the saddle's iron ring, and anchored the free end with a trap chain. The saddle became a crude pulley. She weighted a second line with iron and threw until Ronan caught it. "Tie the hauling loop beneath your arms." "My leg will catch. I will keep it lifted. You cannot pull me across alone." Miriam planted her moccasins against the pine roots. "You once told me snow only asks whether I can stand. This is not the time. Then let it ask." Ronan tied the loop. The rope groaned, the saddle shifted, and the ring bit into leather. "Ready?" "No." "Good. Neither am I." Miriam leaned backward with her full weight. The pulley and pine took part of Ronan's burden. The rest traveled through her shoulders, hips, thighs, and locked knees. Ronan dragged himself toward the broken edge. His injured leg struck timber. His face went white. "Stop," he gasped. She stopped without releasing tension. "Lift the leg with the short line." Again. Miriam pulled. The rope burned through her gloves. Her boots slid, then caught between roots. Ronan crossed slowly, suspended above the water. When his hands reached the near ledge, Miriam wrapped the rope around her waist and hauled until he grasped stone. She dropped to one knee, seized his coat, and pulled. He rolled onto the snow beside her. Then Ronan said, "You should not be here." Miriam stared at the storm. "You are welcome." His laugh was barely sound. She splinted his leg with pine slats. The ankle was badly swollen, but the bone held. She fed him broth and wrapped him in the buffalo blanket. Getting him onto the mare required the same rope, a low branch, and Ronan's remaining strength. Miriam mounted behind him, one arm around his waist, and led the second horse. By the split cedar, fever had begun. Ronan sagged against her. "Stay awake." "I am." "You just called me Samuel." His body went rigid. "I did not." "You did." "I am sorry." Miriam tightened her hold. "Live long enough to apologize properly." The cabin appeared near dusk, its roof heavy with snow. Inside, Miriam laid Ronan on the repaired chair before moving him to bed. She cut away the boot, reduced the swelling with snow wrapped in cloth, cleaned the gash along his calf, and measured the medicine instead of giving him all they had. He woke near midnight. The ledger? Hidden. Horses? Fed. Doors? Barred. You? Tired. His eyes closed. At dawn, hoofbeats entered the yard. Through the shutter crack, she saw two riders. One was the narrow man who had laughed at Coldwater Crossing. The other wore Rusk's red wool scarf. They dismounted. Miriam moved Samuel's ledger into the buffalo coat lining, stitched the opening shut, then hung the coat behind the hearth. A fist struck the door. "Rusk sent us," the man in the scarf called. "Vale's hurt. Property cannot be left unmanaged." "It is managed." "By whom?" "By me. You have no claim. I have possession, records, and a locked door." The other man laughed. Open it before we decide Vale kept you here. Miriam lifted Samuel's rifle. I stayed by choice. We came for the account book. So, you admit there is one. Silence outside. Then, wood struck wood. They were using a fence rail as a ram. Miriam checked Ronan. Fever held him, but his hand had closed around the bed frame. Do not rise. I can shoot. You can barely see. The ram struck again. Miriam poured rendered fat across the stone step through the lower hatch. She fixed a trap chain between the table leg and the door brace, low enough to catch an ankle. The third blow split the upper hinge. Snow pressed heavily above the north eave. She remembered Ronan's warning. Do not stand beneath it. Miriam aimed not at the men, but at the cracked roof support over the porch. She breathed, braced, and squeezed. The old rifle thundered. Wood splintered. The loaded snow shelf broke loose. A white wall crashed over the porch, buried the ram, knocked one man down, and drove the other against the hitching post. The horses tore free and fled. Miriam reloaded. You have one chance to leave, she called. The man in the scarf dragged his companion from the drift. This is Rusk's land. No, Miriam said. It is the house you failed to take. They staggered away. Only after the pines swallowed them did her hands begin to shake. Ronan stood in the bedroom doorway, one shoulder against the frame. You fired at the roof. I told you I was not a marksman. You brought down half the winter. It was available. He looked at the buried porch. Grease-slick stone, chain across the doorway, and Samuel's coat behind the fire. Then he looked at her. You saved me. Yes. And the house. Yes. I left you here because I thought that was protection. It was abandonment wearing a noble coat. Pain crossed his face, not from the leg. I was wrong. Miriam set down the rifle. I did not go after you to earn another winter. I know. I did not defend this place because Samuel chose me. I know. I stayed because I chose it. I chose this house. I chose what we are trying to keep. Ronan's gray eyes held hers. The words between them had changed, but neither spoke the final ones. 3 days later, thaw water dripped from the eaves. Ronan could stand with a crutch. Miriam unstitched the coat and checked the ledger. The paper was dry. At the table, she placed 2 tin cups beside the fire. Samuel's dented cup remained on its peg. Ronan drank, watching her over the rim. The lower pass may open in a week, he said. Then rendezvous is our only chance. He nodded. His leg would not carry him through a fight, nor could his hands correct Rusk's figures. The evidence belonged to Samuel, but the truth now belonged to Miriam. Outside, the snow began to release the mountain, and with it the road that would carry them toward the reckoning Rusk had tried to prevent. The lower pass opened beneath running water and broken snow. Ronan rode with his injured leg stiff in the stirrup. Miriam carried Samuel's ledger inside her coat. The spring rendezvous filled the meadow with canvas shelters, pack horses, smoke, iron traps, and men trading beaver, fox, and marten. Rusk stood beneath the largest awning, with his account books stacked before him. His face changed when he saw them. You were warned, he said. So were you, Miriam answered. Abel Mercer and Hugh Larkin stood near the weighing beam. Both recognized their signatures on Samuel's hidden page. Rusk laughed loudly enough to gather a crowd. This woman came west to marry a dead man and now imagines she understands the fur trade. Miriam laid the ledger on the table. I understand dates, weights, seals, and subtraction. She placed each invoice beside Samuel's record. October 12th, 31 beaver, 6 fox. Your seal marks the full weight, But your invoice credits 24 beaver. Rusk reached for the page. Ronan's hand closed over his wrist. Listen, Ronan said. Miriam continued. November 3rd. Salt charged twice. Powder carried forward after payment. Interest calculated on a balance that did not exist. Mercer stepped closer. That is my mark. And mine, Larkin said. You witnessed the settlement, Miriam said. Mercer's mouth hardened. Samuel paid him. Rusk shoved back from the table. A scrap hidden in a dead man's chest proves nothing. Then explain the matching lead seals. She set 3 tagged pelts beside the ledger. Other trappers began checking their own receipts. One man cursed. Another demanded Rusk open the main book. Rusk refused. That refusal did more damage than any confession. By sunset, the traders who supplied his post had withdrawn their credit. Mercer and Larkin signed that Samuel's account had been settled. The assembled trappers rejected the seizure claim and declared Rusk's debt paper worthless among them. Ronan did not speak for Miriam. He answered only about White Pine, the broken traps, and the sawed bridge beam. The truth remained hers to carry. They returned to the cabin 3 days later. Snow had pulled back from the southern wall. Dark soil showed beside the steps. Miriam packed the wooden trunk. The season had ended exactly as promised. She folded her dresses, Samuel's letter, and the cloth seed bag. Every sound from the main room reached her. Ronan shifting wood, the scrape of his crutch, the quiet restraint of a man refusing to block a door. When she entered, Ronan waited near the table with a folded document. The lower road is clear, Miriam said. Yes. Our agreement is finished. Yes. The honest word hurt. He handed her the paper. Half the cabin, half the stores, half the income from the White Pine trap line. Her name written beside his. What is this? Yours. Payment? No. Gratitude? No. Then why? Because you kept it. If I leave, it remains yours. You would let me sell it from Missouri? His mouth tightened. I would dislike it. That is not an answer. Yes. Then Ronan stepped closer. I brought you here because leaving you with Rusk was wrong. I asked you to stay because winter made it necessary. Neither reason is enough now. Miriam's throat tightened. I do not want you here because Samuel chose you. I do not want you here because you saved my life, kept the stores, or found the ledger. Then why? Because when you are gone from a room, I notice. Because I look for your cup. Because this house was shelter before you came, and now it is somewhere I want to return to. He held her gaze. I love you. I want you to stay, but I want the staying to be yours. 3 cups still hung above the hearth. Miriam took down Samuel's dented cup. She held the cold tin between both hands. He brought me here, she said. Yes, but he does not decide what happens after. No. She wrapped the cup in Samuel's letter and placed both inside the trunk. Then she took down the remaining 2 cups and set them beside the coffee pot. I spent years believing I had to earn every meal, every bed, every kindness, she said. I will not stay as your debt. You are not. Or your duty. You are not. She poured coffee into both cups. Then build up the fire. The mountain is still cold. Ronan's breath left him in something almost like a laugh. He added wood to the hearth. Later, when the ground softened, Miriam carried the seed bag outside. Ronan followed with a shovel, limping but upright. She pressed the first seeds into dark earth. Behind them, smoke rose from the chimney. 2 tin cups rested near the fire. The road south remained open. Nothing barred it. That was why staying meant something. You told me once the snow only asks whether a person can stand, Miriam said. I remember. And he looked at the cabin, the planted ground, and the woman who had chosen both. You did more than stand, he said. You kept the whole house standing. This time, Miriam let herself be loved without reaching for a task to prove she deserved it.